Hey everybody. World War III, it's still a major concern, even if it doesn't feel like it. And for me, it doesn't feel like it sometimes. Every so often, I find myself enjoying the normalcy bias and the complacency of assuming, like, nothing's happened yet, so we really don't have to worry too much, and we just need to keep preparing as usual. But when we see some of these events, like Russian subs down in Cuba, along with other warships and everything else, we like to think that this stuff just happens. It's part of drills, it's part of global international relations and everything else that happens on a regular basis. But in the context of everything that's been happening recently, especially knowing that Russia, as well as other Eastern adversaries, understand that they are currently at war with the West in many ways, we have to look at these things more nefariously than we would have otherwise. And I think it's easy to write things off as being trivial or routine, when in reality it's just another demonstration that we're on the razor's edge of a very bad situation involving a global war. And so when I'm prepping, I have to keep reminding myself of that, even if I want to try to avoid it, which is why a lot of my content recently hasn't necessarily revolved around the idea of World War III and all these other things that are happening. Lots of channels do a very good job of covering all that, and I've tried to work with other aspects of preparedness in order to avoid finding myself in the midst of all of that negative information. But I think we're at a point where we really just have to pay attention to it and be aware of it. And look, we have situations coming out right now, as of just the last few days, where we have ex-KGB agents saying they're concerned about the fact that these ships are off the Florida coast. And they're concerned about the idea that there may or may not be weapons on board these ships, and the fact that a possible or accidental launch is actually a real concern. And that's actually coming from an ex-KGB agent named Jack Barsky, who said that accidental launches are a higher risk due to increased tensions, and that because Putin knows that he's at war with the West, this becomes more and more of a possibility, which is why these trivial events aren't as trivial as they maybe seem to be. We also have to remember that terms for a ceasefire just came out from Russia via Putin, saying that if they basically give all the land up they've lost to Russia, and they remove themselves from the idea of ever joining NATO, and they make sure they never take any more weapons, especially nuclear weapons, from the West, that's the only way they can move forward in a ceasefire, which we all know is likely not going to be allowed by the West, because it seems that we have a vested interest in keeping this war going for as long as possible, even if it seems like Ukraine doesn't have much of a chance, which is probably due to the amount of money that's exchanging hands during this possible or situational conflict, right? Obviously it's possible because it's happening. But regardless, it's not just Russia. We have to understand this is a global scenario. We also have the situation where Russia and China both didn't show up to a peace conference in Switzerland that was specifically about Ukraine. And it would be one thing for Russia not to show up because they know that the cards are stacked against them and that there's really no point of them being there. But we also have China not showing up in solidarity with Russia, which reminds you of where the lines are being drawn regarding our adversaries and the people who don't want to see the United States remain the leader of the world. So, which isn't necessarily our job, but it has led to a certain level of peace to some degree that we've all been able to be comfortable with and experience during our time in this country as of right now. That likely is going to change here very soon. Sorry I'm so casual. I've been working a lot today, trying to get stuff done, cleaning, just trying to put things in order. And I'm testing some new equipment here. We've got a new EcoFlow unit that's going to be talked about on the channel here in more detail very soon. That's very impressive for how much it can do in the sense of providing backup power solutions. I also have an atmospheric water generator here from Solaris, which is actually really interesting. That whole situation of wanting to use solar power to generate water from a dehumidifier, well, we have a more legitimate way of doing that now that's cleaner and healthier and something you could more rely on in that type of a situation. So these things are being tested so that I can evaluate them properly and then let you know about their performance in upcoming videos. But these are the things I'm trying to work on. It's not all just guns. It's not all just gear and everything else. It's not all just current events. There's a lot when it comes to preparedness, and it's hard to wrap your head around all of it, which is why I'm making this video right now to remind you that this World War III thing is a real concern. It's a major concern. I expect the lights to go out at any minute at this point. I mean, they could just go out whenever. And I have redundancies in place and I have plans put together for how I'll react during that scenario, but I'm still not comfortable with where I am. I'm still not comfortable with the amount of supplies that I have and the ability to produce thereafter. I'm still not comfortable with my level of networking and community building I've been able to accomplish. I'm not comfortable with where I am, which if I'm not comfortable with where I am, with the amount of investment I've made, as well as the amount of success I've had with a channel like this one, which is all thanks to you all, by the way, then I'm sure many of you are not comfortable either. So we have to keep preparing as best we can, but we can't forget just how much of a concern World War III really is. And I wanted to make this video because I've been trying really hard to not constantly beat that drum of World War III and doom and gloom and everything else that's going on. But I've also noticed that it started to take a toll on me mentally, in the sense of forgetting how much of a threat it really is, and how that could be just as dangerous as involving yourself with too much of that information for too long, right? So prepping, trying to figure out new and innovative ways to keep things rolling, even if we don't have access to the water systems that we rely on or the power grid that we rely on, right? These are important things to consider. And we need to just keep moving forward as best we can. Of course, I do work with Midway USA. They're the biggest supporter of the channel when it comes to allowing me to acquire new gear, test out new equipment, see what will or won't work for people in the preparedness community. So I really thank Midway USA for supporting this channel to the degree that they do. They're an amazing company. I got to visit them here recently. It was a really good interaction and a really good tour of their facility that gave me more confidence about what they do as a company, which allows me to support them even further than I already did. So just be aware of that. There are good companies, there are good people out there that have your best interests at heart when it comes to your preparedness. But there are also a lot of companies and people out there that probably don't. So just be aware of that. And one thing that I can tell you is that I live in a small town, 2,000 people. We just had a PSA put out by our police department when it comes to locking your doors and locking your vehicles, because we had vehicles getting broken into on one of our streets in town recently. And it's a small town of 2,000 people. Like, this is not somewhere where crime is a regular event, but that's what's happening here. So if it's happening here, it's happening at a higher degree. Anywhere else, the population is larger. And it just goes to show you that in these desperate economic times, crime will go up no matter where you are. And with World War III on the horizon, if something conventional happens, or if even something nuclear happens, and everyone goes into panic mode, similar to what you saw in 2020, crime will just grow with that as well, because opportunity will be there and will present itself. And that desperation will only grow further and further to be more desperate. And people will act on that desperation in a more egregious way. So, just wanted to remind you, it's a real concern. You need to be prepared. You need to be moving forward with what you can, where you can. These things are not going to be in everybody's wheelhouse based on budget and affordability and everything else. But understanding that these items exist might allow you to make plans or to figure out ways that maybe you and your group could come together to explore what technology might be available to you so that you can make your lives more easy during a World War III type scenario, right? But there's no guarantees, and all this stuff might just shut down the second it all happens. And you know what? That'll be that. And hopefully you had contingencies for that as well, which is why 2 is 1 and 1 is none, right? So anything else you need from me at all, go to magicprepper.com. Check out the website. There's lots of discount codes. There's lots of affiliation and sponsorships there where people not only support the channel, but have really good products that you might be interested in. And then at the same time, there's ways to contact me there or to get into other aspects of what I do on social media regarding Subscribestar, regarding Discord, regarding direct contact forms, and a newsletter subscription service that I have, which may allow me to communicate better with you all when these videos don't necessarily get the message out as good as they used to. So, speaking of that, if you want to help the channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share the video, hit the notification bell, because if I don't tell you to do those things, apparently I get punished for it. So I'm doing the best I can here while reminding myself of who is holding the, well, at least the way I was raised, the yardstick of punishment. Anything else you need from me, you know what to do. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.